So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. And we get real here. And I've got a great guest, a real guest, Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Lapidow, 30-year Army veteran, 30 years service. And thank you for your service, sir. And pilot in Iraq. So, a couple of things came to mind. I said, today I'm going to start out with my disdain and disgust for the Democratic Party. I think you'll like it, but I'm not a Trumper by no means. But
Yeah,
here's the
yeah.
thing, and I just got to preface it because we all know what happened. We had this government shutdown lag on for a historic period of time. And there was the Democrats standing tall. We're not giving an inch until we get the subsidies back and until I forget what it was that they were holding on to. There was something else they were holding on to, but at the minute
Obamacare subsidies. It was, yeah.
Obamacare
It was,
subsidies was the big deal, but the minute that business travelers got stuck at the airport, the big donors, basically the big donors, whether it was the big donor that wrote the check or it was one of his constituents or one of his employees, the minute that happened, Democrats folded like a pile of bitches. And there came an so the country suffered for 45 days needlessly. I mean, obviously it was going to come to that. So that was Democrats for you. And then I just said, it's just this growing momentum in my eyes. I'm not a Trumper by any means. I want to find the middle. I want to find, here in Florida we have a personal injury attorney, John Morgan, who's saying he's going to start the capitalist party. I'm saying, so I tried to reach out to him. I reached out to the law firm he sent the money over to start the party. They gave me his personal phone number. I've got him on the phone a few times. What's the capitalist party, John? He hasn't answered me yet. So I don't know what that means, but maybe it is the middle of the road. But so are we ever going to
well,
find the?
everybody should be a capitalist, right? I
I
mean, you
am a
have to
capitalist. I'm
figure, right?
100% capitalist,
Yeah,
but I do believe in champion the
yeah.
vulnerable. But that was another point I was going to make, and then I was going to arrive at my landing and start asking you and have you jump in. Was
They're not mutually exclusive. And actually, being a capitalist and champion the, non-performers isn't mutually exclusive. It actually brings non-performers up
it
from
does very much so,
when you're capitalist. Yeah,
and then
it
comes
brings
the
everybody up.
it really does, and then comes the logic when you talk about food stamps, just for example, right? That was the other thing was food stamps was when you think of food stamps, that's a big part of Walmart sales. Walmart's in everybody's IRA. Walmart's in everybody's Roth. So,
Hmm.
government spending, however you spend it, whether it's on a military complex or whether it's on food stamps, it's a part of the economy at this point. So, how do we find that balance? And that's my question, really, is to start there. Is how do we find that balance?
Well, the first thing I would say immediately on that is great. You can have as much, well, I'm trying to think of the word, generosity per se. But the thing is, we're printing money at this juncture. So what, and it's all the money we printed with COVID. You guys can say hi to Louie.
Hi, Louie.
Say
He's
hi, Louie.
adorable. If
Yeah,
Mia here, she'd
yeah.
be she'd be nuts. She loves to
Yeah.
watch dogs on
Louis the
TV.
head coach, buddy. He won't leave me alone. Louis, my youngest right here, he won't leave me alone. Yeah.
He's
Yeah, he will
adorable.
not leave me. He has to be. He won't even let me talk on the phone. He'll take this paw and whoop right on the
He
thing.
loves
But
it.
yeah, with the side jaw. Oh, yeah, he loves me. This guy. That's the sidetrack. Yeah. It comes down to we've been printing money, and it's weird that you're talking about this because the other day I zone out in the gym when I'm trading sometimes, and I was thinking about I don't know how I did, but I saw a meme the other day, and I started thinking about it the other day. And it pissed me off at the gym, which motivates me up there. We've printed more money in the past 6 years. I saw a stat that we've printed since we opened, since the Fed, since we established the Fed. Isn't
And,
that crazy? Unless
and that's just
since COVID.
but so let's talk about historically how we got here. And then I'm saying historically, and then I'm going to go
Yeah.
almost metaphorically. So you got John McCain, you got Joe Biden, you got Ted Kennedy, three deal makers in the Senate for a 40-year period. Obviously, none of them are there any longer. Um, they were making deals. So basically, the deal was, essentially the Republicans were on the side of the military. Let's grow the military. Let's improve. And we did a great job with that. The technology and the
Yeah.
force is incredible. And there's a lot of points to be made on that. But let me just stick to one point right now. You've got the Democrats incrementally growing the New Deal. now, and that's just that. That's just a long story short. However you want to look at it, where we got to that inflection point where, like you say, suddenly printing money is a general part of conversation when you talk about politics, was the inflection point was Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And I've always said, when you talk about the Affordable Care Act, it was basically, if I ever thought of it, what it could have been was just Cobra on steroids. It didn't have to be what it became. What it became was this giant expansion of Medicaid, which was where the inflection
Mhm.
point
I
was.
agree.
Right.
Yeah, I
So
agree on
so
that.
now, and I've always said the acronym's completely wrong. The ACA should have never been the Affordable Care Act. It should have been the Available Care Act. Whenever at any point you need care, Jon Lapidow gets priced on his age and his gender. You do not get priced on the fact that you just got diagnosed with a brain tumor. I'm not making a joke of that. I'm
Mhm.
just saying.
Yeah.
And so then came this shutdown. Then came we're going to take away the subsidy. So all I've ever said is if Democrats would agree, this is as far as we go, the Affordable Care Act, bring back the subsidies. This is all America can afford. Because when you think of the subsidies alone, it cost the country $1 trillion last year. So when you start
Yeah, they
thinking
got to
about,
come up with a more efficient method. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's just, and it comes. I guess we ran into the same thing we said on this is you can't. One side doesn't want to print the money to pay the subsidies. So I know they've proposed to now, which they wouldn't have negotiated with a closed government anyway, to discuss a better, effective way to get that care than the subsidy way. Going to the insurance companies, giving Trump wants to give a rebate to all the people, all the patients.
well, and I don't
So
know what the final solution is. I just at this point we're at a point without the subsidies, and we don't know what the final result will be. People are going to get priced out of coverage. So, like you said, you can't negotiate with it. We all said that you can't give him the continued resolution and let's start talking. They held out for the 45 days. I'm using 45 days.
that
I
was
believe.
just to be dumbasses, by the
Right.
way. You can't. It's funny. The only people that believe the Democrats were people that believe their messages because they. I hate to use the word literally now because everybody overuses it, but I got to use it here. They literally voted not to open up the government. It was their vote because of the filibuster. We needed you needed their 6 votes or their 7, whatever had been that vote.
And then you
So,
saw when you got to that point where travelers were stuck at the airport, those 6 votes. So granted, there's
and
six
then all of a
votes.
sudden, ooh, yeah.
There were 6 votes
So,
that weren't necessarily ultimately tough races, right? So that's how you get your 6 votes. You're gonna win. Just give us the vote. Let's put an end to this nonsense. So I
but
mean,
yeah, but to your point, and you were correct. There was no reason for that 35
no.
days because yeah, the end state was that they're going to negotiate anyway, and now it just cut down their time to negotiate.
Right. So whether you say Trump wants to give you a rebate or Democrats just want to bring back the expanded subsidy, whatever it is, there was no way to
Yeah,
negotiate with a closed government. It was nonsense. And I said that.
correct.
And I hadn't
Yeah.
fully come to the conclusion I'm disgusted with the Democratic Party yet. Now I've come to that conclusion 100%. Like I said, I like to preface I'm still not a Trumper because the wrecking ball effect isn't my thing either. But
I love how you guys always got to make the disclaimer. I'm not a Trumper, and my favorite is when people like I have my cousin who doesn't. He didn't vote for him, but he's here nor there. But I love the way that everybody enjoys the fruitfulness of what he produces and establishes. But then they have to always give the disclaimer. Oh, I'm not a Trumper.
well, my biggest when I
Right.
acknowledge the fruitfulness, I acknowledge that he's the guy that swings the bat harder than anybody. I've acknowledged that. I've said he's the Reggie Jackson or the of baseball. He hits a lot of
Yeah.
strikeouts, but he also hits a lot of home runs. And the fact of the matter is, I don't like that he's doing what he said he was going to do because I don't like what he said he was going to do. But the fact of the matter is, when we think of Ronald Reagan, for example, he said I'm going to close the Department of Education. He didn't do it. It grew in size and scope. When I mean, Donald Trump
Oh,
has
that was
been
yeah. That was.
That was a promise
Yeah,
he made,
yeah,
a campaign promise. I mean, when Obama said he's going to close Guantanamo Bay, it was never about closing the facility. It was about we had prisoners we couldn't try because the information we would have to use
yeah,
against them would divulge national secrets and assets
sure.
all around the world. So he moved these prisoners to the Bali Islands. So suddenly it became, oh, good job, you closed the facility. You didn't resolve anything, and you didn't even close the facility. And you still have prisoners
Yeah,
that'll never be tried and held forever. So this is what politicians generally do. So I don't know. The economy's in a total shambles. Now there's a feeling that we're going to come back around. I mean, I see people struggling right now. So I know that if there's a sense
I
of
hear you.
when
Prices,
people,
that you're correct. Yeah, price. Yeah.
yeah, I'm concerned about the people struggling. I know them very well. They're friends of
Yeah,
mine. I seem to
yeah.
do okay under any circumstance, but and you're doing okay pretty much under any. Well, you gave everything. You gave your life to the country, so you deserve the military
Yeah.
retirement you have.
It's it. It depends on where you are. Everything in life is about timing. You know that, Trippy. We're older guys. Actually, right now in life, for the people that are doing quote unquote well, as opposed to the people who aren't, are basically the people that got in on the low interest rate, got their houses, got their property, have their equity, got in on their low interest rates, got to a red one, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, and now you're sitting whenever now, hopefully interest rates will come down, but now you're sitting on equity. You got a nice place, so you could weather a bad economy. What the trouble right now is our youth coming up. That's which to come back to your point, it's all timing. The youth now coming up, like I'm a retired guy. I got my house in time. I got this house down here, in 21 when the interest rates were low. So I got out here, with my 8 acres. But the kids now with high interest rates, not coming out with high salaries, not coming out with jobs. A college education means nothing now unless you're a lawyer or STEM. Basically, it's a scam. So these kids are coming out and they're not be able to get houses. So they'll never be ahead like the way you and I were ahead. Because we got our first property. Oh, it valued. We got our next property. And I'm not talking properties like we were Bill Gates or, moguls. I'm talking about we just got an apartment. Oh, then that valued. I got a townhouse. Now I
Right,
got a colonial. You
right.
know? So now a kid can't do that anymore. There's no solution at that point because uh, since they drove inflation up, Biden drove inflation up in 21. That's why BlackRock and everybody in 21 were buying all those mid-level houses, three, 400,000, all those townhouses. They were going like hotcakes because they
Now
never
they own
raised
them.
interest rates. Yeah, now they all own them and they're renting them out because now they afforded everybody out of them. So now they own them and they're able to rent them back to all our poor kids now. You
Right,
see what's happening? That's why they
absolutely.
did that.
And then the other thing too is
Yeah.
when you think of employment, whether it was before my time, and actually you were in the military. There was a time when there was the apply here, die here jobs. You got a good job, you got a good
Yep.
retirement, and that's what you got, but you did it in the military. I didn't do that, but those options are gone. Now
Gone.
even the military is offering a 401k to they're doing that right now.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
saying
The
it's
military is now, they're not getting the same one I did.
no.
I'm one of the last of that. Yeah.
Right. So they kind of got away from that. So basically the best retirement options are gone. So my question again, go and when you talk about BlackRock buying up those houses, right? There was a thing I talk about. It was Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger. He died at 99 and a half. He was not only a great investor, Warren Buffett's partner, he was a hobbyist architect. And he said, I will contribute $300 million to the University of Michigan for dorms, but you have to use my design. And what the design was these tiny units with no windows, hallways, and basically
Mm-hmm.
you could do your homework outside. You have your meals in a community dining hall, community bathrooms. And I'm just wondering, is that what we're getting to for our young people now? Is these tiny units with no windows, and BlackRock and Charlie Munger especially essentially testing the waters with that very generous donation, but nonetheless, how does it work on college campuses, and how will it work in major cities for people's permanent
Yep.
residence?
Yeah, there's a two. I figure I like the way that's a great point you brought it up, and I was starting to think of an answer. There's two possible things that come out of that, which your observation is right on. Now, this is what us conservatives start getting worried about: the collectivism of the 15-minute city. Have you heard that term? The 15-minute city.
No, I haven't. I want to hear
Uh,
that term. I want to know more about it.
all right. So when we get off, or we'll talk about it or Google it, look it up. Actually, whatever. What happens is these kids are everybody owns these small little apartments or flats per se, like you said, bubble houses, and all the kids are all. It's like sheep. You might as well put a barcode on them. So that's number one. Number two, the savior will be you and I generation. The millennial, even though we're not millennials, we're Gen X. But the Gen X millennial, if their parents have their houses, they're going to have to move into their parents' houses. And then they'll just own those. So
Right.
those are your two options.
That's your two
Yeah.
options: the privilege of enormous birthright, or the other option is what we just talked about, those tiny units and I'm just,
Yeah.
and when I think of Charlie Munger and I think of all the commercial real estate going empty right now because there's so many things changing, I could see an old Walgreens being 100 units. I can see anything. In California, they're already initiating it where they're streamlining the
Oh, yeah,
permit process.
15-minute cities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think
And
about you're able to stack everybody on top of each other, right? You're able to, instead of all those nice homes that burned down, that's a whole nother subject in Cali because they want to build those that 15-minute cities because now you can control all those minds at one time, with any scare of a pandemic or you know communications. You could cut off you could have Elon wire, he's got his wireless there. You can do all that good stuff. You've got
it's
all that
happening.
block of voting. Yeah, you got the voting. You got it all going on. One stop shopping. You never have to leave your house.
Right, and it's happening. And then I'm this I want to be, I'm not, I want to be the solution guy. How do we get past this? And that's always been my question: is how did the two parties come
Well, you
together
got
and
to
get
make cuts, but it's the solution is what nobody wants to hear. Well, and then we got into it I like how we keep tying up our conversations right back to what we said. We have to stop our spending. We're printing too much money in our economy where it's devaluing our dollar. So the individual with inflation, the individual, you and I are getting, our taxed per se, a double tax because our money's not worth what they say, and then we're getting taxed by the government. So they say we're working 107 days a year for the government for
right.
spending. So and we're going in debt still. So and if you lower interest rates, then you're going to even have more inflation because it'll create more demand, and you don't have the people producing anything.
So this is my question when you say that about stop spending. So I love to use the acronym DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. So it failed. I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't a big success in the beginning, but we abandoned it. And why aren't we back to exploring? So for example, when you think of the Ukraine war, now Russia said their assertion was they're going to be in and out in 90 days. They're at it 4 years now. And the fact of the matter is, it's this tiny country with this incredible streamlined military. Drones has been their big thing. Is there any sort of government efficiency we need to explore about not building billion-dollar jets and getting getting into simpler stuff that works better.
We're gonna always have the industrial complex and sell off our old shit like we used to use for the Saudis. Give them our old F-16s. Develop new planes. I mean, that's just business, right? When it comes to that stuff for um, production. But what were we talking about before that? Like, I think we we're talking about the big industrial complex. We were just talking about something right before that with the spending, right? Yeah. So you're right. So we're always going to spend on that, defense contractors, all that, because of national defense. That's a huge expenditure, no doubt about it. But we have to also get rid of all the. We just brought in 25. They said 11 for like 100 years. We brought in 25 million migrants, and they take a lot of housing, right? They take a lot of welfare. 59% of all welfare was Afghanis for some reason. Foreigners, not blacks, not whites. Foreigners are getting all our welfare. So that right there is a huge chunk of change. You got to get these people out because they take housing, they take resources, we only have so many doctors that can work on people. It's not, doctors don't grow on trees. I know lefties like to give out free health care. What are you going to slave doctors? Are you going to harvest them? Are you going to grow them? You're going to bring them in from Nigeria?
No, that's another question. But okay, so on the compromise of immigration, on a compromise, so we own, as a Democrat, as a Biden voter, we own the borders being left wide open, unattended. So okay, but now we're at a point, and we've all seen the images of hooded guys just throwing people in vans. We are evicting some of these people, but on the notion of law-abiding citizens coming from other countries and the diversity and the knowledge they bring with them, we do need immigrants in our country, and they do contribute a lot. And we're always an immigrant country. The old joke goes, every Italian's named Tony because they wore signs on their shirt to New York.
Yeah,
But
it was different back then. They're not assimilating now. They're coming in. And again, there's certain ones you want. We're not bringing it since the Hart-Celler Act in 1965, when they stopped it being merit-based and they just started bringing in the dark ones, bring third world country ones. I'm sick of sugarcoating it. Do you bring in third world shitheads, Somalis, people from Venezuela, drug, you get thing, then you're going to bring in you're going to get what you bring in. You got parts of Aurora, Colorado taken over by Venezuelans. You got Somalis up in Minnesota. You got Muslims, which is probably our number one threat right now. You just saw what happened the other day. We imported all that. They're getting ready to do that in every place in the U.S. What you just saw going on in Australia, the only reason that we're a little better is because they're afraid of us carrying. If people were carrying in Australia, those guys might not have killed 12. They might have killed like 2, 3. They would have gotten shot by 10. If that happened in Texas, or we would have gotten shot by people. But they confiscated guns in Australia. All your liberal friends, they love that crap.
But I have a lot of Muslim friends that are beautiful people that contribute a lot to America. How do we come to an understanding, a compromise where people that want to contribute to America are welcome? How do we? There was sort of like the George Bush had the guest worker program, and it never really took shape. But how do we come to that understanding?
Yeah, well, it's got to be somewhere in between allowing them to pour across the border for 4 years straight, and doing it the way we did. Remember, what's wrong with your relatives and mine? My relatives are immigrants. They came to the turn of the century. Ellis Island burned their commie Bolshevik card because they were Russian Polacks. They said, "We love America." Well, these guys are waving Hamas flags in our cities. You don't plant a foreign country flag in our cities like you're taking over. And we all know in the Quran when you build a mosque, when you're praying, that is asserting your dominance. And we all know it. It's saying, look, we're here. So the lefties could look away, and everybody could virtue signal it, but that's what they're doing. And get ready, because what they just did in Australia is coming everywhere.
Well, okay, so first let's unpack the fact that the border was open for 4 years. As Biden was concerned he would lose his progressive vote. So that whole action was ridiculous, and we own it. As Democrats, we own it. But we got to get back to the basics that, like you said, many people came to America from foreign countries and contributed a lot. How do we get to the basic? How do we get back to that? Like you said,
I would right now. I would cut off all immigration at all right now and just keep it. Start try to withdraw that Hart-Celler Act and just merit based. Whoever is of value, just set up any way Congress has to set it up. Whoever is of value to our country, whoever is not going to collect welfare, let's start with those people. That's a good baseline to start with. Hey, who's not going to come and steal Coach Trippy's money from where I'm not even giving it to a homeless man, somebody that just got off a boat from a country that wants to kill you and hates you to boot. Now, Coach Trippy's working an hour a day to pay them and not a homeless man. So that's a whole other works.
So that's a whole nother. So that brings me to a whole nother point. When you think of homeless vets, I actually work at a homeless vet or a homeless.
I just use that as an example.
No, but I agree. I agree. I'm not disagreeing at all. I work at a homeless vet home. It's a repurposed hotel. And it's really not what you want to live in. It's really fairly terrible. It's just not fair that that's where they're living, and they've contributed everything to this country. Then comes when I've literally sat down with the director. She said a lot of times when people join the military, they really don't have the life skills. So they get in the military, then they got 3 hots and a cot. When they leave the military, they still don't have life skills to succeed and get their own place.
A lot.
And so how do we just to be? So
but
that's
they
a whole
should enough. Military definitely. Unless you're a shitbird, you come out. Even a young person coming out, say 4 years out of the military, is a good little union guy. He's a good working UPS, ground, the uniform. I remember when I was just getting into college at Rutgers, remember what was it, Cigna, the uniforms, you had the UPS, the guys that managed the union guys. Military people are good at directing people. So you had them driving trucks, had them work the warehouses. There's always places for them coming out of the military, even guys that aren't officers. And then guys like me were the guys that were managing the union guys, managing their time, their shifts, that kind of thing at the entry level. And then if you got West Pointers,
Well, West Pointers aren't going to. I don't think any West Pointer is going to ever wind up homeless. Nor Rutgers, nor Villanova.
That's an Ivy League education.
Right.
Yeah.
Villanova, all that. You're probably not a fan of Villanova, but it is a good naval academy. And
it's good.
So let's just go. Let's go baseline. Like you said, let's go baseline. You come to this country, and entitlements are not you're not eligible for them, right? But you're producing
zero.
Right. Let's go baseline. Zero entitlements. Baseline. Zero entitlements.
There you go.
In California, it was kind of a funny thing. Gavin Newsom was saying anybody in this state's going to get free health care. Then suddenly he came to this epiphany: we can't afford it. We've got to get some kind of reimbursement, right? So if you can't afford it on a state level, but you're campaigning for president to do it on a country level, how does that work? Let's just do the math together. You can't do it. You can't do 1/50th of it. Now you're saying let's do 50 times of it. I don't understand. So I agree, but there will be people that have a lot to contribute. Not necessarily, they're not doctors, they're not lawyers, they're just good people that have a lot to contribute. But like you said, you're coming into this country, you've got to apply. That was the notion.
You got a visa system. You do have the visa system.
The notion of George, I believe it's W is the young one, right? George W is the young Bush, right? Had a guest worker program initiative in the House. He says Harry Reid was asleep at the wheel when we had this going. How do we bring that back? So Harry Reid, just to clarify, was the Speaker of the House at the time.
I think what the Trump guys want to do, and I don't really disagree with them, is they're not real excited about giving jobs to foreigners and even legal immigrants right now. They want white boys, black boys, Puerto Ricans. They want American boys to get off, and girls to get off their asses and go. Because who do you see cooking in kitchens? Not who's working in 7-Elevens. It's all what Indians, Mexicans. What they want to see is when's the last time they saw a white dude in there. Well, if you get rid of everybody, then they will be the dudes working in there. Let's see that happen.
Well, I can honestly say I've worked in restaurants where I've seen a lot of white kids working, but I will also say this: so Donald Trump made this statement, North Carolina start building furniture again. And I mean, we're talking about jobs that may never come back though. But then there's also automation, which is taking jobs. And then there's also, so like you think of this example, let me give you this example. Years ago, you used to pick up the phone, call a hotel, say, I need a room. You used to call a cruise line and they give you, now you do it yourself. You're not a paid employee. You're going on a website. Nobody's answering that phone. You've literally replaced a job and you're doing it for free. So that's how these creative websites got more and more effective is basically we're saving labor. We're going to invest a bunch in these websites. Jobs are going away for numerous reasons. It's not necessarily immigrants taking jobs from Americans. There's often
it's always fungible.
Right.
It's always fungible. When you take those away, then give us first choice. That's basically, I guess, if you want to put it simplistically.
Right.
Give Americans first choice of even the shit jobs, right? Because if you look at other countries, Kuwait, which I spent some time in overseas, when you get a rich country, Kuwait per capita is wealthy. And no citizen works. They all hang out. They get a stipend from the government. Yeah, and it's all foreigners that do the work. But I don't think Americans will be too fond of that in a capitalist society and companies,
Well, Kuwait falls under the category of a scale of economies. It's a small population with an enormous oil revenue. So there's plenty of money to pad the pockets of the Kuwait. In Saudi Arabia, they nearly they nearly had a total uprising, and then the king said, "Just give him some money and squash the uprising." Yeah. And that was what he did. He ultimately fell out of favor because he said women can drive or something, and he said no, he's too liberal for us. So then ultimately his son became.
That is being liberal. That'll get us all killed.
Your wife's gonna smack you in the head right now.
She just looked at me too, asking me if I wanted a coffee when I said that. Yeah.
So
that's funny.
So now there's an old saying: Americans want to wear Nikes, not sew Nikes. It's not an old saying. I might have even been the one that thought of it, for all I know anymore.
That's a good one. I like that.
But so you say let Americans have the first pick. I say there's no legislation that can make Americans have the first pick. Employers are going to make the first pick, right?
No, it's not. You get rid of the pool of workers, i.e. illegals, i.e. anybody in the country. Get them out of here because that also frees up housing. And because remember, we're low on all that too.
Well, I made the
suggestion. And they'll bring down the cost.
Well, that could, but I made the suggestion: make unemployment a bridge loan, not necessarily a gift. Make it just a bridge loan. Make it that you pay it back. And then I said, but let's go down this road. Let's go down this. Okay, so so say me being the libtard, but I'm not. But that's fine. I can consume that for this podcast. We give that, and then we take back the tax the tax loophole. Companies are borrowing money and getting a total tax break on the interest they pay on that borrowed money. If we took away that one tax loophole, we would bring in a lot of revenue. I don't have figures, but a lot of revenue. And that's been discussed numerous times. But of course, corporate America has their fingers on the pulse of every House representative and senator. So, and
you got donors.
And there's a logic now, which Warren Buffett said his company, Berkshire Hathaway, paid a $5 billion check to the IRS last year. He said if only 800 other companies did just that, no one else would have to pay taxes. So when you take away the
Well,
tax burden,
that's what another what you said, the taxes we used to not with tariffs. Let the tariffs pay about the taxes. That's what their plan is.
well, the only thing about the tariffs is like a sales tax. We pay the tariffs, not when we bring in Costa Rican coffee and there's a dollar tariff on it, we pay the dollar.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
American
yeah,
citizen
yeah.
pays the dollar.
Definitely.
So when even sometimes when you hear we brought in $40 billion in tax tariff revenue, that's Americans $40 billion. The country didn't reduce their price. They said we can either do business or not do business, and the business seems to still be being doable. So and then there's another acronym, TACO, which is Trump always chickens out, especially when it comes to tariffs. He says he's going to impose 170% tax on China, and then he goes and shakes hands with Xi Jinping, and they come to some crazy ass agreement. Nobody really knows what the agreement
Yeah.
is, but he announces it was a great agreement, so we must believe it. And I'm not so sure it was a great agreement, but the tariffs, as much as I want to believe we've got to sort of stem the flow, we need to do more of our own production. There's good reason to believe that some of that production's never coming back. And then how do we resolve it? My solution was always, if the truth is that if corporate America paid their fair share, more people would have to pay significantly less in taxes. That would ultimately enable young people to buy houses, would enable not young people, because like you said, the college thing's just, unless you go to school to be a lawyer, a doctor, unless you have a specific understanding of what you want to do in school, if you're leaving with a general business degree, you're going to wind up at the counter of enterprise. That's not what you
Yeah.
want to do. That's not what anybody
Yeah.
coming out of college with a $60,000 debt wants to do.
Oh yeah, well it's 60, probably even more than that, depending on their debt. But you're right, with debt not now, they'll never even get ahead of the game, and then you got to talk about trying to buy a house, which the average price of a house in the whole country now is like 450.
450. Yeah.
Remember, that's insane. I just bought a truck that cost as much as my first house.
Yeah.
It's close.
It was
Yeah.
close. Yeah, I remember my
So,
parents' first house was $32,000. So that's going back a ways.
I mean, and I remember my parents was close to that too, what you said, and they were shitting bricks.
Right.
They were like 32,000. Holy moly! So it's all relative, bro.
It is. When I bought my house, it was 140, and me and my wife were like, we didn't want to go over 120. I said, you know what? I don't want to think about it anymore. Let's just sign the papers and be done with it. And now we're talking about 450. I mean, what? How do you get to that decision? How do you? I mean,
inflation, man. It's a lot of printed money, a lot of inflated places.
But income's not going up at all at the same rate. So
income's definitely going up, but not commensurate to inflation. Inflation has been going up less fast. That's actually the best way to describe inflation. But you never say inflation's going down, because that's just you're being it's antithetical to what you're saying. It's really just not going up as fast. It's down to like 2.6% now, I think. You want it really down at about 1.4, but if you can get it down below 2, you're looking good. So it hasn't budged, but it was up to 9%, for the last 4 years. So you're talking, that's a lot of damage to production, a lot of damage to supply, a lot of, that's why used cars are so expensive now.
Right.
That's why houses are so expensive now. Nobody's producing anything because there was all this money in the economy and everybody has, government money. And then the states were giving out COVID money. So there was nobody making widgets, but everybody wanted widgets because they had money in their hands. Hence inflation right there. So once they finally cut down on spending and we get all this money out of the economy, which they do by raising interest rates. So they should have done that immediately in 21. It would have stopped BlackRock from buying all those damn houses for next to nothing. In 21, because inflation was so high, so it was worth so much, but interest rates were low. So you could keep buying houses and at the front end and the back end for low ass interest rates.
Right. And
So
they
if you had capital, yeah.
now that's the question. So how do we get our young people to the point where they stop buying every new iPhone and start having capital to make investments and purchases and
Again, it's going to come from what Doge was trying to do. It's got to be attacked in different functional areas, right? You got to do what we discussed. You got to get rid of the dead weight, the foreigners that are collecting our hard-earned money. Get rid of that, right? Because that's expenditure. Well, let's spend our welfare on our people, right? Let's lower that one. So then you're printing less money for that. We got to budget less military. We got to be wiser in our military spending. Like, let's say the part out loud that everybody hates to hear. All the rhinos. MAGA people want to cut the military shit down. Let's stop giving money to Israel. Let's stop giving money to Ukraine. Let's stop giving money to let's give our money to our people. Let's just be selfish.
so this
Even
brings
though
me
it's not being selfish. It's not being selfish. And then we get our budget down, and then you're on a glide path of getting our deficit down. So then our dollar goes up, and then it's worth more, and we could produce more stuff, and then housing prices go down. That's basically 101 economics right there, isn't it?
It is
Supply and
very much
demand.
so. So very much so, supply and demand. And this is an interesting because we both mentioned Doge now. So let me tell you about SpaceX has this enormous amount of success, right? Enormous. And here is the contrasting views of SpaceX versus NASA. NASA does everything on paper. SpaceX learns from crashing shit. So
Yeah.
basically, that was one of my biggest point of contentions with Donald Trump. Doge crashed. Donald Trump abandoned it. Whereas we should have said, let's
It
expand
didn't.
that.
It's
Where
still
he's
going.
gone, we
It's
need to expand that research. What is the premise of what can we do better at every aspect of government? We need to keep that. I think they just announced they closed Doge, and I want to reopen it.
Did they say they closed them? I know. I mean, obviously Elon left there. He couldn't
It
say, but
doesn't have to
I know
be
they're
Elon
still.
Musk following his example of leadership. Like I said, when we
Yeah.
think of it in a small context, NASA writes shit on paper for 10 years and then finally develops a mission. 5 years later, the mission takes off. SpaceX never did that. They launched rockets and they exploded them. And then they said, let's learn
Yeah.
from that explosion. And they did. And they're doing things. They even rescued astronauts from space, whereas NASA had no plan whatsoever to get them out of there. So my point
Yeah.
is, if
That was
if
great.
if it doesn't have Elon Musk cannot contribute government to 5 companies and be a full-time government employee. There are other people that can explore government efficiencies and
I
inefficiencies.
mean, it's supposed to be This is what Congress is supposed to be doing. It's part of their job.
Congress can't
Uh,
do it.
the
They can't.
problem.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because the minute they do it, for example, let's just say the F-47, let's shut it down and build 10,000,
Yeah.
$1,000 drones. Well, the people that are building those planes in their district are going to say, listen, we're going to spend $50
Yeah.
million primarying you. You will not have a reelect. You
Oh,
will
well,
not.
100%. Well, exactly. We know how the corruption works. But
Right.
I said, ideally, what do you have to do? Well, if you want to go further for what you said, then we've got to actually start hanging people in front of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If you want to really get to
Not
the problem.
necessarily. Not necessarily. The there was I just recently did a podcast with a guy, and his name is Neil Thinater, and he wrote a book, Positive Politics, right? And he said, if you want to be a positive, if you want to contribute to politics, you don't have to run for office. You can create one initiative, and you can get it done local through local government. So if the notion of that when he was saying that was the whole notion of America when the founding fathers said House of Representatives are supposed to go to Washington for 2 years, bring their community concerns to
Mm-hmm.
Washington, then go home, go back to your farm.
Right? Part-time job.
Right.
Yep.
That's all it was ever intended. Now they're there 20 years with their own private transit system, with all sorts of perks. Their cafeteria is better than I ever eat, and that's their lunch cafeteria. And this is the kind of crap that goes on in America on a daily basis.
Uh,
And we're all as
that's all
Americans
that.
watching it happen. You fought for your
It's,
country, and there's some congresswoman like Angela Ocasio-Cortez or um what's her name? MJT Marjorie Taylor Greene.
yeah,
They're
it's
all
really good.
enjoying
Yeah.
the perks of Congress. And you're fighting, you're literally, I mean, Joe Biden's son died from a brain tumor sleeping next to burn pits. I mean, and our
Yeah.
Congress people are taking private transportation to work. There's an issue here.
It's I mean, I can't argue with it, right? It's you see it happening. If we saw Rome, we're not this isn't our first rodeo when it comes to seeing how governments collapse. We know all the signs and symptoms are there for a collapsing government right now. Inflation, devaluing dollar, uh, can't sustain the population with the original natives. So now you need, we're calling us natives. Now you need migrants. That's the same way Rome went down. Then you got to supplement the military with people that are not loyal. That's happening. So it's all the functions and signs are there for issues right now.
Not, but you
Smart
talk
people
about
know it.
collapse, but moving forward, after Trump, moving forward, how do we get to some sort of balance? Is always my question. I say this, it's just so funny to me. Tennessee, a nail biter election, right? They're saying, oh my God, a Democrat could win this election. I said, he can't. They can't. You know why? Because they put a progressive to run. You can't win in Tennessee with a progressive. I said, put Jeff Rabinowitz there, a sense of reason, a voice of reason. I could have pulled it off. I could have, but you have a progressive. Of course you're going to lose. And that's Democrats. They're convinced the progressive movement's the way to go. And it's not. But the problem is
And
after
they're the ones
Trump,
that own all the social media. All the stuff that the left values, which is all theater, because they don't have any policies. They know nothing specific on how to do anything whatsoever to run the company. So everything to them is performative and stuff. So whoever generates social media buzz and Twitter buzz, that is who they value. So yeah, that's why AOC and that crock of shit girl, all them, all those people get their buzz. It's ridiculous. That's where we're at now. But it just adds to the problem we're talking about: money, corruption, theater. It's all Roman Empire shit. Rome's
right.
burning.
Well, Donald Trump has been very definitive on policy. Absolutely. Democrats are, basically clearly not definitive. And when they are definitive, it's more about expanding entitlements than anything else. Got that. How do we move
Spending
forward?
money, correct? Yeah,
How do we,
correct.
because there is corruption within the Trump administration. They're calling it grifting. They're saying, oh, and then there was this whole like it's like a secret. He tore down the east wing of the White House to build a banquet hall. No, he's also building an underground bunker because the last time he needed it, it wasn't exactly what he had hoped for. So now we understand the idea, the notion of why this is all happening. But then they said the contracts were all basically padding the pockets of the contractors who said they were working for free were also getting awarded lucrative contracts. The contractors who were
Yeah,
so
they always say
there's a lot of
the,
corruption in government, but moving forward, is there any reason to believe there's a solution? Oh wow, you're a lucky guy. I
I
wish
got
somebody would have
delivered.
brought me a cup of coffee.
Coach wants a cup. We can't send it from North Carolina. Sorry, Coach.
No
She said
problem.
sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
She's working. She's heading back to her office. Did you bring your gun with you? She's got the office in the front. So if we get deliveries or anything,
Yeah.
She's got the vantage point to the front, so I always make sure she's got her handgun in her office in front. So, there's, believe it or not, we all think, hey, at night, a guy dressed in all black, scurrying around in the shadows at 2 in the morning. That's your big threat, because that's what we used to watch on movies. Your biggest threat during the day is a guy wearing like a reflective jacket that looks like a landscaper at 2 p.m. when you got the mail guy, you got a nice afternoon, you got kids out playing, and a dude sneaks into some girl's house. That's the thing, because at night, when you see somebody at 2 in the morning in the middle of nowhere, every person in the world calls the police.
Right. Well,
At
that's
2
what happened.
p.m.
That's what happened with Trayvon
Yeah.
Martin. Basically, he was no threat, that was the whole. But so to that point, because we always call me a libtard. I think the greatest non-government organization program ever developed was developed by the NRA. It's called School Shield. It's a free program that any school administrator can call and request an evaluation of the safety of their schools, right? So I'm all for gun ownership. But again, you go down this rabbit hole where the minute you say but responsible, I'm concerned about the mental when a person's deemed mentally unstable and they can still get a gun, right? So the minute you say that,
What's deemed mentally
so that was what I was
unstable?
gonna that's what I was alluding to. So just say they have a domestic violence a penchant for domestic violence. That's a concern. They've been charged. They're considered a stalker. They've been charged with this problematic behavior. That would that would tell me they should not possess a weapon. So that's a good
So
example.
you don't think that they should have a God-given right to defend their own life if a guy goes to kill or murder them? Just because
Well,
some woman got pissed off at him, and it didn't even go through due process. It could be how many girls are like, man, my husband's abusive.
Well, no,
That's
you're right
why we
about
have a
that.
Fifth
So,
Amendment.
so there's no one size fits all to anything, right? But I was using that as a primary. I was using that as an example because, hang on, let me
That's
do
why.
this.
Well, we have a solution to what you just said. Do the Fifth Amendment, due process. So if I'm convicted of a domestic violence, or I plead to it, then I don't get my gun, right? Because that's a felony. So, but if you just accuse me, I can accuse you
No,
any
so
day.
I may have misphrased it. I'm glad you clarified it. So let's just say
You
that's
know,
the standard. Let's just put forth that as the proposal of the standard, right? As the proposal. The minute you say that, they say you give a lib an inch, they want an arm, which is actually true. I don't disagree. That is, but you can't preclude the legislation because of that logic. You know what I'm saying? You can't. They say if you put in a gun control bill, if you're convicted of domestic violence, the NRA will argue that should not be, and the bill should still not pass. The the bill should
I
still not.
agree with that. Even I'm a pure. It's if you get in trouble right now and you go to jail, right? And you do serve your time, you come out and you go and you're still allowed to protest, right? You're allowed to, once your parole's over, you're allowed to not be spied on by the government, right?
Right.
You're allowed due process again, right? So why are you not allowed a gun?
No,
Because
when it's
I,
when you're cleared of all charges, right? When you've done your time, but
well,
if you
that's what's in now. That's what's in now. If you're a felon, a convicted felon, until your parole is up, and actually, I think that's wrong because you're not even supposed to have your. Uh, right now, even if your parole's up, you're a former felon's not allowed to carry. That's bullshit too.
so we just had this discussion too, and the guy is talking about expungements, right? So expungements, right? So a 16-year-old gets charged with marijuana. It sits on his record for the rest of his life. For the rest of his life. He goes to join the military, it proposes a problem for him. So we've talked about expungement legislation, right? Well, in Florida it's extremely difficult, whereas in California it's extremely easy. That was basically the context of the conversation. Then we were like, can we
Uh,
codify expungement legislation? Can we do just what you said? You've been convicted of a felon. You've learned from your mistake. You're living
yeah.
the life. Can you now own a gun? Is the question, is the answer yes or no? And generally it's no. So
Well,
there's no
again, but that means they're by the letter of the Constitution they're actually breaking the law because it it doesn't say convicted felon even that came out later by Congress, right? They came up with that because of all the Second Amendment says is the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and then the well-regulated militia, right? So there's those doesn't say convicted felon, just like a convicted felon still has their First Amendment rights. They still have their aids. I can't, because you're a convicted felon, if you get another felony, I can't just kill you by impaling you. Right? You have that right for me not to do that.
right.
So again, that the Second Amendment is no different than any other Bill of Rights. I call it dangerous freedom. When you are a free person, you get a gun. If you're violent with it, you die with it. Same thing if you're a violent felon and you get in a vehicle and you start driving it down the street, running people over. You die. You get shot doing that. Same thing. Dangerous freedom. But the difference is driving's a privilege. Owning a right to keep and bear arms is right there enshrined in the U.S. Constitution. So it's it's the only one that says shall not be infringed. It explicitly says shall not be infringed. So if you look up what infringement means, it means limitation. So anything you do, even saying a permit, even requiring training, even saying felons can't have it is an infringement by definition. So,
But there is some
but,
sort of agreement that at this point in time there may be a need for that infringement, right? At some level. At some level. There may be a need for that.
the Supreme Court has established precedent since then, and so has Congress. That yes, there can be certain regulations, and then the NFA being the one that hit us the hardest, the National Firearms Act in '34, which they're going to get repealed now because of the Bruin decision that just came out. It's a violation of the Second Amendment. Congress came out with restrictions. It's a direct violation of the Second Amendment since the Bruin decision that just came out.
I have to research that. That was just recent?
Yeah, well, what do you ask about the Bruin decision?
Yeah.
Yeah, BRUEN.
That was just recent in the courts? Because I go on SupremeCourt.org. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I
was just saying, I just want to follow up more on that because that'll give me some more talking points down the road. Because
actually, you'll be familiar when it happened because when you started hearing about New York and New Jersey people getting concealed
that's where it came from,
firearms.
Right? Yeah, that's where it all started. Because they pulled back the case because they knew they were going to lose, but the Supreme Court decided to hear the case anyway.
Well, they're going to lose everyone now.
Right.
Since the Bruin decision, what the Bruin decision did in a nutshell, Clarence Thomas led it after Trump put in Gorsuch, Coney Barrett, and the other one.
No, it was before Coney Barrett, but it was Gorsuch, and it was Kavanaugh.
No, but after he put in all three, Gorsuch, the guy who got dragged through the water, Kavanaugh, and her. The Bruin decision came out after that, 6-3.
But initially, there was a case that New York brought to the Supreme Court. They realized, like you said, that the tides were turning, and they pulled the case.
So that's it.
Right.
That's the Bruin decision. It originated in New York. You're correct.
Right. Yeah.
That's where this case came from. It's finally, for 100 years, my father, rest his soul, passed away in 11 in Jersey, never got to carry a gun because Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island were all violating the U.S. Constitution that wouldn't let you bear arms when you left your house. So New York, finally, when the Supreme Court got the 3 judges from Trump, they said, now we'll take the case with Clarence Thomas. And they said, hey, Now we validated that the Second Amendment is a damn Bill of Rights. Stop regulating it.
Right.
That's basically,
That's how it.
yeah,
So
what
that
it
is
came.
so that which I am 100%. I love gun. I love gun ownership. I think like
But it's not even about guns, Trippy. It's not about me, you owning a shotgun or a nuke or a machine gun. It's really just the capability for the citizenry to keep a check on the government. It really has nothing to do with me getting mugged in New York City. It's already a God given right for me to be able to defend my own life at any way the most efficient way possibly. That's already a God given right, right? For me to not allow myself to get killed by somebody, right?
right.
Right. That's already. But the Second Amendment says it doesn't give us the right to have guns. What it does is it tells the government you have no right
To say we
to
can't have
regulate.
guns. Right.
Yeah,
Right. Which is
exactly.
it's a law of averages anyway. So if everybody guns are whether you regulate them or not, anybody that wants a gun can get a gun, right? So then you're just doing the whole
Yeah.
like you said in New York, the Bernhardt Getz thing. He got a gun. It was totally illegal that he carried it. He protected himself, and the problem was he got sentenced to jail for a year for having an illegal handgun. That made no sense. He
Because
literally
you're
spent a year
always allowed. You're correct.
you literally
Yeah.
spent he literally spent a year of his life in prison for protect. And what was so not interesting was the only one that didn't commit a crime afterwards was the one was paralyzed from Bernhard Getz shot, so he didn't
Yeah.
commit a crime
Yeah.
afterwards. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Bernhard Getz protected himself and still did so I completely so Bernhard gets protected himself and still did a year in prison for doing so. So when you
Exactly.
go that one person doing that 1 year, it's kind of like the same logic as you're innocent until proven guilty. The guilty person
It's
that goes
illegal.
free, the
It's a
guilty person that goes
violation.
free is
Yeah.
better than the innocent person going to jail. Is my logic there?
Well, presumed our Constitution states just what you effectively said, that we're presumed innocent, right? Innocent until proven guilty. And so, and the test would be, and you know as well as I do, if you brought Thomas Jefferson back today and you told him just in a nutshell, only that vacuum, what happened to Bernard Getz, right? Or the kid in the subway, he would say that's not the way we designed the justice
Not
system,
at all.
right? He
Not at
would
all.
disagree. Yeah,
He was physically
yeah.
attacked. He had been physically attacked before. He knew this problem was coming. And then they accused him of deliberately seeking that path to have it happen again. You can deliberately seek any path you want. When you travel to work, you deliberately seek a path. I mean, you
And
don't just.
and yes, correct. And think about the liability of the government, right? So what they did was a group of human beings, the legislature of New York violated a Bill of Rights by saying that he can't have the thing that could most effectively protect him. So if he doesn't have said object, he could be serious bodily injury or die. So that's also a lie. You should be able. That's violating his civil rights because you're not giving him the best way to protect himself. He's using something that isn't a nuclear bomb. It's not going to blow up Trippy when he protects himself on the subway, right?
Right.
He's
It's not
using
going to blow up the whole
a
subway
handgun.
station either. It's not going to do any
Exactly.
other. It's not going to. It's going to. It's going
Yeah,
to. You're
and if
literally
he's
mitigating the
trained,
problem.
exactly. And it's your responsibility up till today, present day, to come to a guy like me and learn, hey, when you use a pistol against a bad guy, God forbid, make sure you protect your backstop. What's behind your target? You clear your shot. So you mitigate all those risks, even while you're defending yourself.
Well, that
But
brings
that's
me.
up to you. Yeah, but that's up to you. Don't say I wanted the government to do that because that's what a liberal would say. I would say that's up to
No,
the
no, that is up to
individual.
you. And what I
Yeah,
was going to say is it's something
yeah,
I preach a lot on the podcast is self-enrichment courses all around through the K through 12 system is basically just Jonathan Lapidow's range. You should know how to use a
yeah.
gun
Come to Fort
safely.
Lab. Yeah.
Right. And
Here's
you
a
should and
plug.
learn how
Here's a
to
plug right now.
and
Yeah.
then my point has been recently I brought this point to the table that if you do just that, you are a kid from Florida, you go to Jonathan, you go to Fort Lab, you learn about guns, the safe use of guns. You should be getting school credits, sort of like we have bright futures towards college, because you're literally learning something on your own time that's going to benefit you your whole life. And that's something I've tried encouraging, and that's the kind of movements I'm trying to talk about now, because I'm not against gun
Yeah, but
ownership.
if you say that in your party, and you're
I'm not a part
right
of any
now, you're gonna.
party anymore. I'm no
Yeah,
longer a part of
yeah,
any
yeah. I know,
party,
and I like to hear that. I like to hear that, Trippy. But okay,
because
so in
I've
your
been
former party,
I
if
did
you
have a lot of
and if
faith in him, but I listened to things like, I mean, we can go on so many tangents here, but I'm starting to
yeah,
call President Obama Captain Integrity. And it's like he conveys this message of ultra integrity. And I use one example. When he ran for president, he talked about the Unger House. The Unger House is a place in the Cayman Islands that houses 64,000 corporation headquarters, or main offices for tax shelters. He said it's the biggest scam in the world. He becomes president. He said, "I'm gonna fix it when I become president." He puts Timothy Geithner as his Treasury Secretary, and then Jack Lew as the replacement. Two foxes watching the hen house. I'm like, come on, stop talking the bullshit to get elected,
we're here from the government, we're here to help.
right. No, stop. So he's been on this tangent now that I'm just kind of like, I liked him as a president for the most part, but stop portraying yourself as Captain Integrity, because you just weren't that.
Yeah.
But so then brings me to this last point, because I want to leave off at this, and I have a question to ask you. So you served in Iraq under probably more than two presidents, but just let's compare. You served in Iraq under George Bush, and you served in Iraq under Obama. Your life was significantly more in danger under Obama's rule of engagements than they were under Bush's rule of engagements, basically. Long story short. Is that correct?
Okay, clear the record a little. When I was in the military under a lot of presidents, starting in '89 through 19 when I retired. But deployment wise, I was only deployed under one president. That was Bush. That was George W. Bush, who I deployed under, because I deployed end of '04, all of '05. So he had just won his second term against, no, I was going to say Romney, Kerry,
Kerry.
against John Kerry. And I was in Iraq. I was in Kuwait watching that election. I actually voted absentee. So I was in under for Bush, and I thank God in retrospect that I was, because your point is correct. In comparison, from what I've heard from soldiers and what I've read and what I've talked to people, that their rules of engagement was different from when I was there under Bush. It was worse under Obama. It was again, rules of engagement can be different for different areas, different theaters, different places,
And different positions.
units,
And different
yeah,
pilot versus
exactly.
a ground force. Right.
100%. So there's a lot of, we got to be more specific on that. But troops in general, from my observation, from the multitude of data that I have and my experience when I was there under Bush, a soldier felt like they had their back was covered more under the Bush administration. Like you'd be taken care of. Like Bush fought against U.S. soldiers being tried in criminal court international, where the Democrats actually offered us up.
To the Iraqis.
Believe it or not.
To the Iraqis.
No, to the international court.
Okay, to the international court. Okay.
Yeah, where we have U.S. policy under, don't quote me on which bill it was or who, but the U.S. does not fall under any international authority. Like, we're not even supposed to be under somebody in a theater operation, combat-wise, but our troops should not fall under any international criminal court unless the U.S. endorses it.
But the only time you're under any other authority is if you're working with NATO, right? If you're working with NATO, NATO commanders take the lead. Or is that not
UN,
so?
Yeah.
Or UN. So
UN.
if you're a part of that operation, they take the lead. But then comes the fact that what you're saying is that they're taking the lead. They are the ones ordering the mission, right? But if you were to commit or do something wrong, you should still be tried in U.S. courts, not international courts. So there was a difference
U.S.
there.
Yeah, U.S.
Military courts.
military,
Military courts.
100%.
That should always be
Our
the
policy
case.
has always been that. Yeah,
Right. And that did change under Obama. They were
it's
offering you up to international law, to international courts.
yes. Again, I want to check on that because I'm being accusatory here, and I hate to say wrong things,
No, it's not wrong
but
because there's other reasons to believe that there is points of contention with Democrats versus Republicans leading the
oh,
military.
I've read if it was Obama or Biden that offered us up to be tried under soldiers to be tried under international court. I'm going to look it up after actually on
Yeah,
that
if you would
because
please, because we will get to a. I don't want to. I'm not making a definitive statement either by any means. I actually have no right to
yeah.
make that definitive statement because I don't have that knowledge. Because my question really led to when your life's in danger and it's because of if you feel like you're not as much danger as under one president or another, you're bound to have that hard feeling forever. Simply put. So, and it's again, it's a, and I'm going to leave with this point, but it's this sense of bad politics. Democrats keep talking about how Donald Trump said John McCain was no war hero. I don't like guys that get caught. It was verbiage. It was awful. I think it was demented. But the fact of the matter is, if you felt more safe under his leadership, if you did or anybody else did, that's what really sticks in your mind. Is you want to come
100%.
home alive. So let's stop beating up the points of nonsense and let's start talking about the real issues.
Yeah, you could go back and look at Luttrell's book, Lone Survivor, and a lot of those guys when it came to rules of engagement. Chris Kyle in American Sniper. If you read a lot of those books and the other ones, their rules of engagement, how they thought if they have to make a decision to shoot somebody, and if they have back was covered. Like I guarantee you right now, the troops feel confident as hell with Hegseth and Trump as their command, with Hegseth as the SecDef or Sec War, and Trump being their commander in chief. They know that they won't be thrown to the darn wolves in a tribunal at the UN like
And we don't know
Netanyahu
that
was.
we don't know that would have happened under. We still don't know. We're not confirming or denying that
I,
would have happened under Obama
yeah,
or
there has
Biden.
been accusations. I want to say that I can be definitive that there were accusations under
Okay,
a Democrat. It was either Obama or the previous dipshit Biden.
so let's leave it
Dipshit.
at that. Let's because I do want clarification. And we're gonna do
Yeah,
the podcast again, and we're gonna serve that clarification
yeah,
because YouTube gets excited
yeah,
if he gets
yeah,
something wrong. So we didn't make a definitive
yeah,
statement by any means. But
yeah.
I was going to ask one more question. I sort of lost it, but okay. So, okay, let's do the elephant in the room then. Real quick, last point. How do you feel about Hegseth? Because there's generals that would literally repeat things you could say in different rooms that you would agree so much with that do not feel comfortable with Hegseth. There's good reason for that. I've said he never even managed a Taco Bell, and then suddenly he got a department with 3 million employees. I've been concerned with that logic. What is your feeling of Hexa?
I have no problem with it whatsoever. For one reason is just because I know the way I like the way Trump runs the military. Strength but not war like. So he put Hegseth in, and when you give somebody like Hegseth your commander's intent and you say drive with it, he's going to do follow what Trump wants. No doubt about that one. I like the way that he was a mid-level guy. What happens is every time you get a darn cabinet guy, you get a Fortune 500 guy, you get a Raytheon guy. If it's a defense one, you get a Raytheon guy. Like the past real dipshit, General Austin, that complete dipshit
You didn't like him?
that they put in.
But Cheney was a
So
Halliburton guy, and I mean,
I didn't. Did I say I like Cheney either? I
okay,
didn't like
okay.
Cheney
I'm
at
just
all,
saying. I'm just
and I
saying.
didn't like Rumsfeld. And I
Well,
didn't like
Rumsfeld was a
Rumsfeld.
complete imbecile. I've made that point.
Okay,
My own
so but
observation.
so this so you see the point I'm coming to? Look at the last four names I just put off my list. All general level slash CEO level guys. Hegseth went in under a different banner, right? He went in as a mid-level guy, I think major to lieutenant colonel, which, by the way, we always joke around in the military. The two guys that have their finger on the pulse in the military is like the E7 sergeant or like the major in the officer corps, because they're right in between both. They get the word from the guys. They get the word from the troops that aren't afraid to be yes men to them. Because remember, generals and guys, colonels, they get yes men. Anything you want to hear. Whereas a major, or the mid-level guys, they know what the real gripe is to their troops because they hear it directly in their ears, right? So they make good guys coming up to set forth the commander-in-chief's agenda. And the other thing is he was a press guy. He was on Fox. So everybody jokes and makes fun of him. Of course, the left, they have to find some low-hanging fruit to make any good meme because they're dumbasses. So what they look for that. But what I looked at it as a feature, not a bug. The guy knows how to brief missions. Because remember on Fox, he's like, him and Will Kane would discuss specifics to military operations. That was unclassified very well. He would articulate it well. So he knows how to do the Pentagon message to the press. He knows how to speak military. He knows the mid-level message. He knows the high-level message. And you know what? It keeps those 4 stars that are cushy-ass life, that there's 100. During World War II, there was only 10. Now there's 100. It keeps them accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trim the damn, generals. Trim the damn pork.
Yeah.
You'll never get me. I love the way that they're doing all this stuff. The military-industrial complex, all that shit.
Well, the 100 versus 10 goes back to my initial assertion that we need a real Department of Government Efficiency to really just to just put those ideas out there.
That's what Congress is supposed.
They're not doing
Congress is supposed to do what Doge does. That's their job.
They're not doing it.
That is their job.
Believe me when I tell you, if Congress had a vote tomorrow and they said we're going to bring it from 100 4-stars to 400 4-stars, believe me when I tell you it would pass unanimously.
I know it would, because exactly.
So there would be no consideration of efficiency. They would actually overlap each other in the Pentagon with no idea what anyone's doing, and Congress would be just fine with that. So,
and we just circled back to one of the original problems that we came up with early. See how that all works?
Yeah, absolutely. 110%. I have one last question because I just found it fascinating. When you went from Major to LC, did you feel like you lost your? Is that why you retired?
No, there was a lot of reasons. The military was getting woke in my estimation. I was coming up at the end of my time on active because I came back to Jersey and I was the counter drug task force guy I agreed to the adjutant general of my state said, John, do you want to come? I've got a 4-year position for you, but you got to retire at the end because unless you can get another. Well, I didn't have to. I could have gotten another job down at NGB. I just wouldn't have gotten it in Jersey because when you're in the Guard and you're a high-ranking guy, it's not like active duty where you just move to. There's no budget. You can move to a different spot. There's got budget because there's no active duty really, and the Guard is very few.
Right.
So I made a deal, and I said once I'm done, I'll either retire or I'll go to NGB, Guard Bureau, and I'll try to make full burn. But I didn't remember. When my time was up, I could have gone to NGB. They actually offered me a job as arms team chief, which is aviation resource management. It would just been checking aviation units in the Guard throughout the country. But I didn't have any kids. My wife and she's got a great job. So I said, you know what? It was right before COVID. I didn't know it at the time about COVID, but I'm like, you know what? Now's my time to get out. I looked at my retirement, blah, 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 no kids. Another 2 years would have made a huge difference. It would have given me another rank. I would have definitely made 06 if I went to NGP, another state. I wouldn't have gotten into Jersey. But
Okay.
I would have
Yeah,
made.
I just
But
wondered
I
about
said,
that
you
because,
know
like
what?
you said, when you talked about being a major, how you're still there with the guys. When you go to lieutenant colonel, you're in the office, right? You're
Now, if when you go to lieutenant colonel and you get a battalion command or what I did, a task force command, then you're still with the guys, which is pretty
okay.
cool. If
Yeah.
you get a command, but if you're thrown like 90% of them, if you're thrown into a staff operations at a brigade or, staff positions on battalion staff, then you're not with the boys anymore. Yeah,
Gotcha,
you're just,
gotcha. I was just curious about that because
yeah.
I mean, I wish I did go down the road of being in the military, but I didn't. So it just fascinates me. It's just really fascinating. But
It's good stuff. I could talk all day, man.
I know, John, it's been great.
Yeah.
We're going to do it again anyway. I'm going to schedule. I'd like to get you on more often, actually, because we had a great
Yeah,
conversation
let me
today.
know. Yeah, I'm retired. So again, I'm running Fort Lap LLC, so that's client based, and then I work in my range too. I train
Yeah, so
people,
you're
and
not
they're
free
separate.
all the
Yeah,
time, but I'll find the time. We'll make it work.
yeah,
Thanks, John. Jonathan
excellent.
Lapidow, Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you for your service. 30 years in the military. You've been an incredible guest as well as always. And I love doing the show with you. Like you said, I'm not your typical libtard. There's my guy. There's
Yeah.
my
Say
guy.
goodbye, Louie.
Bye.
Say goodbye,
You're
Louie.
adorable. Good thing your mommy's got a gun at the front door. I'd come steal you.
Oh yeah, I got one right next to me too, right here.
Let me see. What do you got? A
Yep.
Glock?
Now this is my concealed carry one, Shield Plus.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, see, it's in the We the People holster. You see the concealed carry holster trigger. See how the trigger's protected?
Hell
So
yeah. So it's
no
safe.
mistake.
No mistake there.
No,
No,
yeah, this
that's good
gun's
for.
yeah. That's why you don't need a safety on to get into gun lessons. That's why you don't need a safety on a striker fired concealed carry gun because you can't put your finger on the trigger even if you wanted to. See
See,
that?
we need to know more of that because people with kids in the house are always worried about accidents, and that's an
Yeah.
important feature we should understand more about.
Yep. Now it's not an end all be all
No,
for
but
kid safety,
the kids
but
should
for
know it's
our
there.
safety, yes.
Right.
Yep.
No,
Yep.
that's all important stuff, though. Okay.
Yep.
Because you know me, I can talk, John. I'm gonna let you go. I know your wife's waiting for
Yep.
you. Go have a nice day. Thank you so
You
much.
got it, brother.
Lieutenant
God
Colonel
bless you.
Jonathan Lapidow. We're gonna do it again.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Peace.